Hey, welcome to the shop. Trying to find the perfect CG on this plane. Now to do that, we got to do a couple things. In this video, I'm going to try to cover as best I can from a beginner perspective, a newer pilot who's interested in this whole thing about CG. I'm not going to get into all the science about exactly what it is, but I will tell you simply, there's a point on the airplane where the lift all comes from. It's a line. It's center of lift or center of pressure. There's several different terms. But it's a point of the airplane where the airplane wing is lifting. And where you put the weight is, if this is the center point and we have nose weight or tail weight, the plane is going to fly different. Sometimes they fly really well with a lot of nose weight. They usually fly really crummy with a lot of tail weight. Boy, I gotta really nose her down. Yeah. So in this video, again, I'm gonna go through all of those things. I'm gonna go to the extreme. What are the benefits of having nose weight? What are the benefits of having a little more center of gravity, a little bit more aft? Maybe not behind that line, but what we sometimes people will say, oh, it's a little tail heavy, or oh, it's a little nose heavy. I want to go into those details and help you understand what that's about. Also, how do you adjust it? How do you tell if you have the optimal center of gravity for your plane for how you like to fly? So stick around. We're going to go into a whole bunch of stuff about this. All right, where do we start? Because again, I'm going from a beginner perspective or a new pilot perspective. You just get your plane. You get this guy right here. You look at the manual and it says you need to go 30 millimeters back from the leading edge. I literally take a ruler and come back here, and that's the spot. So when I have my battery in the plane, I'm going to balance at that point, and it should be pretty darn level. Sometimes I prefer it to be dipping down the nose a little bit, meaning a little nose heavy. But again, within that range. That starting spot that the manufacturer gives you is important. Almost every plane, even balsa kits that you put together, they will give you a recommended center of gravity to start with. Highly recommend you look at that. Make sure your plane has that center of gravity locked in. Now, we're going to take the plane up, and I'm going to go through a couple ways that you can test, is the plane happy in that spot? Because that's really ultimately the best way to test CG. Yes, this gives you a starting spot where the manufacturer said go back 30 millimeters. But you might like flying this plane with it even further forward or maybe further back. So let me show you what that looks like with a couple planes going through this process of adding weight to the nose, adding weight to the tail, and kind of pushing it a little bit. Stick around. Let me show you what I mean. Today we're talking CG, and this is the CG testing plane, as you can see by the tail number there, CG SRWR. So anyway, we're going to test this out. Right now I have it set up where it is, CG is right on the wings where it says, you know, underneath FMS put an actual CG mark. So we're going to use that, make sure it's all trimmed in nice. Got kind of a foggy day, but let's see what we can do. So we're going to fly it with the normal CG. No gyro is on. We're not using a gyro. And what I'm trying to do is show examples of, here's what CG should look like as far as from a manufacturer, but maybe there's a better CG, and we'll push it. We'll push it way forward CG and a little farther back. So let's get her up in the air, make sure she's trimmed out perfect for this CG. All right, get her up. Hands off. Yeah, I would be happy with that. Now let's test. So that's the marks on the plane for center of gravity. But you really, the plane's center of gravity is how it flies, not where the marks are. What if the marks are wrong? Because there are many planes that the center of gravity identified in the manual is not the best center of gravity. So a couple tests we can do one test I typically do is the inverted test. How does it perform? How much forward pressure, meaning down elevator, do I need to keep level flight? On a plane like this, you're going to have some. It's not going to be a neutral, as in no forward pressure, because the way the wing is a semi-symmetrical wing, almost a flat bottom wing. All right, there is another test. I'll show you this test if you're scared of going inverted. The other test is, we need to get up a little higher and back off throttle, go down at a 45, and what does the plane do? You can see that the plane is kind of leveling off. That means, for this particular plane, that the CG was a little 45, and you can see the plane just gradually starts leveling off on its own. We're going to test that now. We're going to bring it in from landing, and we're going to push the CG way forward and see how it responds. I'll try to get a good landing here to really impress, so I don't have to edit videos or anything of my awesome landings. Backing off throttle, coming in with just a little power, backing off. Okay. So the two ways to test the center of gravity of how your plane is flying, because again, the manufacturer, that information isn't always the best. It's the best for them to get a successful flight. They'll typically have the CG a little forward. All right, so now we're going to take this battery, and I'm going to shove it all the way forward as I can. Okay, and if I go underneath here and try to balance it, it is a little nose down. Let's see how she flies though, and let's test her. Now, here's the thing, the trim's going to be off now. It's going to be a little off. You'll notice when I take off, I might have to give a little more up elevator on my trim to get it to fly right. Let's see what happens. All right, hands off the sticks. And she drops down just a little bit, not much, a little bit. Let's do another test here. Got a little over half throttle like I normally would, cruise throttle. And yeah, she goes down a little bit. So I'm gonna give a little bit more up elevator. Let's do our CG test. Okay, straight down or 45. And she levels off a little faster. That's because, like I said, I had to give some up elevator. And that's how that's affected. Try and 45 down, and she started leveling off, but not aggressively. So in this particular case, the plane flies fine with that little bit nose heavy. Let's bring it in for a landing, because this is where also it has some effects on landings. Backing off throttle, coming in kind of hot, but let's see what we can do. I chop throttle. And that worked fine. So this plane right here, with that, what I would consider slightly nose heavy configuration, isn't affected like some other planes might be. Again though, we did that test and it showed it was a little bit more nose heavy. Now, let's put this battery back a little ways. So, had it before there, I'm gonna push it back pretty far. Hopefully not too far. I don't want to crash it. I like this plane. Okay. Let's go back up with a battery shoved further back. Let's see how this plane performs. And we'll probably also see how the center, or how the trimming is now changed. Get up. And seems like it definitely wants to climb a little. So we're gonna push that forward. Push the trim a little down. Let's see. No, still got a little. I think we're better here. Okay. We're gonna do our test. And 45 down. And that was pretty neutral. It didn't climb or anything. So in some of those cases, I'm going to do an inverted test also here. And if I'm just barely pushing on that stick forward, which frankly, from my type of flying, having that CG where it is, which is further back than what the manufacturer suggests, very possible that this could be a better flying option. It'll allow me to fly maybe a little slower.
20 seconds.
Get that nose up. All right, we're gonna bring it in for a landing here. And let's see how the landings go, because sometimes, you know, it definitely feels a little bit more pitch sensitive, which is what you're gonna get when you start dropping that CG down. And I can do wheelies a lot better, as you saw. Okay. All right. Let's dig into this a little bit more. Let's play around with it a little bit more. Need to put fresh battery in. We'll come back and try to get some more footage out of it and continue to play with the CG and maybe really push it back and push it forward, adding some weight. Okay. Now I have an ounce of weight in the tail. And it's, you know, trying to move the CG even further back. Doing everything I can to get this thing to a tail heavy flight characteristic. Let's see what it does. I'm gonna get her up and really, I mean, she's not flying. Normally I would have thought she'd want to climb, but she's not. That CG is way back. I got the battery as far back as I can. Let's do another little test. Let's do our CG test. I'll first go inverted with her. She is pitch sensitive, noticing. Oh yeah, she wants to climb. Going inverted, she definitely doesn't require any forward stick. Let's do the 45 angle here, down, up, and that test doesn't show up, but boy, she is pitch sensitive. Definitely find it a little bit more awkward. I don't know if that's the right word, but here we go with our Harrier. No flaps, no gyro, nothing. And this plane here, I mean, she's very floaty now. Yeah, she'll rock a wing, but boy, that nose, she'll go way up with that nose. Gets a little unstable trying to go with a Harrier, but of course she does. All right, let's come in for a landing. I mean, I would say she flies, and she flies okay. It's just a little unstable. It's kind of fun to do. All right, but that's too much for me. That's too much weight back there. She'll wheelie all the way down. Okay. So I've got the battery here. So we're going to move that battery forward a little bit. That's gonna make this thing very nose heavy. I'm gonna test it real quick. Got little spots under here for the manufacturers. And yeah, she's very nose heavy. She's nose heavy based on the manufacturer's suggested center of gravity. Let's see how she flies. Some of the characteristics of a nose-heavy plane are, one, landings can be a pain because they come in like rockets. They don't like slowing down. I've also noticed that nose-heavy planes they don't taxi well. They kind of get a little squirrely. Okay, so I'm going to let off the stick here. And you can see it's going down. So we need a little up elevator. Let's bring her in front of us here, see if we got that sorted out. That's pretty good. And inverted flight, need more forward pressure. Let's do our other test where we go up, I'm gonna cut throttle, come down at a 45 or so, and it looks like it levels off a lot sooner. Let me do that again just to try to get a better picture of it here. We're up high, chop throttle, come down at about a 45 and neutralize the stick. See how it levels off on its own? That tends to be more of a nose-heavy plane. Okay, I'm going to try to bring it in for a smooth landing here. She definitely flies. That nose wants to come down. I mean, I was given a lot of elevator there, and nose wasn't coming up very well. So if you're having some trouble on your landings with getting that nose wheel up, you might want to think about checking your CG. All right, now let's go the other way. I'm going to push this battery back as far as I can and still have it in the strap. I don't want the battery launching down at the back of the fuselage. Let's test to see how that flies. See if it flies any different. Okay. So the trim's going to be off. So we're going to have to trim the elevator a little bit. If I had to guess, it's going to want to climb some. Yeah. Definitely wants to climb. Let's get it in front of us here and take a peek at what we think's going on. As far as trim wise, got about half throttle. And it still wants to climb. Okay, I'm good with that. Let's do our test where we go up, cut throttle, 45. It's not leveling off. It's not leveling off at all. You can go up higher if you want. Now we're going to do an inverted test. Let's just see what happens here. Let's come by. Oh yeah, I got just a little bit of pressure on that stick forward. A little bit more sensitive on the elevator also. Little bit more sensitive on the pitch. I'm gonna bring her in for a landing here, see if I can drop some speed. Coming in pretty hot. Oh, look at that. I could bring the nose way up on that landing to slow her down. All right. But so this, I pushed that battery back, but it is not tail heavy. It's just, it's a little more on the center of gravity, is a little bit more on the aft side, but it is not tail heavy. So there's a determination there. I like the way it flies. the nose comes up nice and high. Let's go back to the shop and talk a little bit about what we've learned. Let's summarize. I tried to go through a whole lot of options in this video. I hope you got a couple things out of it. One is how to test the CG. And remember, you have to have a trimmed plane, and stabilization or safe has to be off in order to really test it. Going down at that 45-degree angle, throttle cut, and seeing what the plane does. If it starts leveling off, and it's a very slight amount. It's not like it's going to just pull up hard. If that's the case, it's very nose heavy, and you got a lot of elevator trim in there. But those two tests that I do, inverted and down 45, give you a sense of how the plane's flying, and if you need to make changes. Also, landing is going to be a big deal. I have found definitely nose-heavy planes do not land very smooth. It's hard to get that nose up, especially on those tricycle gear kind of planes. So a lot of variables there. Look, play with this. It's a process, and I encourage you to dig into that on your plane. If your plane's not flying well, maybe start moving that CG around a little bit, and you might enjoy the way the plane flies a bit. Look, if you have any questions, leave a comment. If you like these kind of videos, hit that like button. I sincerely appreciate it. Have a good one.